why'd you hang your clothes right? I mean, you could have hung them in the back. And I said, no, that way everyone understands why I'm not wearing any pants when they pull up.
Welcome to The Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Today's episode is brought to you by Powder River Cartridge. Powder River is consumer direct, American-made ammunition. Having trouble finding ammunition for your old Colt revolver or your Springfield trapdoor? Check out powderrivercartridge.com. They have American-made ammo for your new or old Western guns. With fast shipping and great customer service, you'll be at the range reliving your favorite old Westerns in no time. So check them out and enter promo code RO on your next order to get 10% off. Hello, and welcome to the Rich Outdoors podcast. Today, we're chatting with Remi Warren. And Remi is literally as hardcore as they come, but he's one of the most humble guys in the industry. Remi's got a new show, Apex Predator, which we'll talk about quite a bit. But he's also a hunting guide, outfitter, outdoor writer, photographer, and videographer. And on top of his new show, Apex Predator, he's also a host for Solo Hunters TV. Remi, at the age of 22, started Montana Out West Outfitters, specializing in elk and deer on public land in Montana, and has since expanded his outfitting businesses to New Zealand and Africa. Remi spends 200 to 300 days a year in the field. The guy knows what he's talking about. Just to give you an idea, he's logged enough elevation gain in one fall to summit Everest 16 times. That's 465,000 feet of elevation gain. When it comes to adventure hunting, Remi has written the book. In his new show, Remi takes a fresh look at mastering the art of hunting. Apex Predator is about studying the uniqueness of a single predator, and then through a series of experiments and learning how to adapt their techniques, he trains and goes into the wild to attempt to replicate what he's learned from nature. So it's a great way to look at hunting from a new perspective, and I think there's a lot of takeaways from that. So enjoy. Hey, Remi, welcome to the podcast. How are we doing?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. I've been checking out your new show, Apex Predator, lately, and I got to say, I really like it. You guys did a really good job on it.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, we tried to do something a little bit different, a little bit new, but still provide people with something that's entertaining you can learn from, whether you're a hunter, non-hunter, whatever, and then, you know, still appeal to that hunting crowd by looking at things in a different way.
No, absolutely. It's a great show for hunting, and I like how it caters to the non-hunting side. For those guys who kind of don't know what Apex Predator is or haven't seen it yet, it's kind of like it's a hybrid hunting show, I guess we'd call it, where you're basically analyzing and breaking down, you know, different predators to make yourself a better predator. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And predators in nature in general. The show kind of looks at humans as being this apex predator. And how did we get to this point? Well, I've got a theory that, you know, we as humans can look at the way nature might specialize in something and adapt that to ourselves, whether it's training physically or maybe even like creating some kind of product or whatever, such as camouflage or optics that enhance our ability to match what nature does naturally, or other animals in particular.
It's a great perspective, and I like things that kind of take an out of the box approach to it. And as humans, we kind of get locked into doing things the way we've always done them. And I think Apex Predator does a good job of kind of looking at it from the outside and like, how can we look at the situation differently, and how can we improve, and how can we, you know, advance farther. And I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've noticed when I've been hunting, there's certain things that you just come upon as the way of doing it because it happens to be the most efficient or the best way to do it. And other things we just do because that's what we think we're supposed to do. But by doing this, you know, I'm finding a lot of ways that may other animals that have to survive and do this daily have figured out the best system, because otherwise they wouldn't be around anymore. So by taking a look at the best systems in the planet and then adapting that to ourselves, overall we're becoming better hunters.
So how much has that kind of evolved have you done these episodes? Have you gone into certain episodes and, here's what I think's about to happen, or here's my hypothesis, and it's come out completely different? Or how has your mindset and how has that had changed throughout the development of the show?
Yeah, almost every single episode. When we first started out, we're like, oh, here's what we're going to do, and then this will be the probable outcome. And after the first few episodes, we realized, look, it's not like it's about something completely different in the end. And that's where the real learning comes in, is when you go in with this mindset like, oh, this is going to be the outcome, and then it turns out to be something completely different. You're like, wow, okay, I wouldn't have learned that if I hadn't have just done what I did. And so then from like the later on episodes, we didn't go in with this preconceived idea of what we think might happen. We just said, let's go in with the notion that we're going to learn what we can and see what happens. And because that's what was happening anyways. And it turns out that, there's a lot of things that we think of, or I would expect to be like, oh, I think this is the way it's going to go down. And you actually learn something completely different. And so it's kind of hard to explain a little bit, but I would say when we were doing a heron episode or whatever, I decided to go in a river and on stilts and try to spear something. Now, on the onset, that seems completely ridiculous, and you go, that has nothing to do with hunting, but while doing something that almost seems completely ridiculous, and we don't hide the fact that we think it's ridiculous, I actually did learn something, because I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to get up there and, just pretty much spear till my heart's content. It'll be easy, whatever. And it turned out to be a very tough way to go. And I think it was this realization that there's a lot of things in nature that we look at and go, oh man, they do that so much better, or so much easier. And we find out in the end that it could be, it's not as easy as we might think. Because I've always, like, out fishing, you see a great blue heron and you go, oh man, if I could just spearfish, this would be so much easier. Like, that heron's taken my fish so much. And then I come to the realization, like, it's hard for that heron to actually catch fish, for it to actually survive. It has to constantly be hunting. And so, some of these tactics are, okay, now you learn patience because you have to. And it turns to be a very hard challenge that you originally thought, oh, well, I'm going to learn this from it. And you find out, no, you learn that it's hard for this animal to survive. And in order to survive, it has to be an expert at being patient, being still, waiting, and keeping after it, and maybe even just scrounging up food, which is a pretty cool learning process.
It's one of those things I think you've learned, or I've learned it throughout all the episode, is that a lot of these animals, or a lot of these predators, have far more patience than we do, and maybe we should work on patience a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There is that element of patience that goes into every amount of hunting. And then also striking at the right moment. Like, animals that have to survive, that's one thing that I've really learned, is like when to make the attack, when to wait, and when to move fast. And as a Western hunter, that's really key, because when I'm stalking deer, or you see something, it's knowing when to go and when to slow down, when to go fast and when to go slow. And that plays a lot into success, especially for me, spot and stalking mule deer or other things. Sometimes if you hesitate for a second, you miss out on an opportunity. And sometimes if you move too soon, then you miss out on an opportunity. So it's a delicate balance between patience and striking at the right moment, or making a move.
So how do you decide between the two? How do you say, okay, I need to move fast, or I need to move slow? I mean, it's easy to say that, hey, we either need to do this or do that, but sometimes, we make the wrong decisions. But how do you decide between when to move fast and when to move slow? And what's the decision process look like?
I've come to the realization that there's no specific answer as to when you need to do something. But I think that as humans, as predators, the more we hunt, the more we do things, we kind of create this database. Our brains and our instincts kind of become this computer system where it's a combination of ones and zeros. And if we just let our natural instincts take over and just do what seems right in the moment, we're almost kind of pulling upon this database of past experiences where you start making the right decisions more often. And it's just a natural process that happens as predators because it's essentially an innate ability to survive. And so striking at the right moment is key in all animal species in all of nature. And so it's almost along the lines of essentially hunting more naturally by just kind of doing what seems right in that moment, not overanalyzing a lot of times. Because I know for a lot of hunts, I've sat there and overanalyzed or debated with my friends, and you have a feeling you should do something and you don't do it, and then it doesn't work out. So in my experience, it's, just do what feels right in that second, not have to overthink it or overanalyze it. Just go for it.
No, that falls back into the patience thing, and just sticking with your gut instinct is huge. I think a lot of people second guess themselves and go back and forth or waffle on what to do, and going into patience and sticking with that gut instinct, I think has a lot of success behind it.
Yeah, and also thinking about the motives of why a lot of times I'll be on a stalk, and if there's other people around, you start thinking like, oh, well, I better hurry because these guys are waiting, or oh, I need to go quicker because of this and because of that. And if those are your motivations, then you probably just need to slow down and be more patient. If you're thinking of external factors that are making your decisions for you, then they're probably the wrong decisions. So you almost have to think about why do I feel like I need to rush? If it's because my buddy's at the truck and I don't want him sitting there all day. I mean, there's been so many times where I've been hunting with people and you feel this pressure of, oh, I got to hurry this stock up because people are waiting on me. And that's one of the reasons I've always found I started to be more successful hunting alone, because I would just go out and I didn't have to worry about anyone else. I didn't have to discuss my plan. I would just do whatever I wanted to do. And I turned out to be more successful that way because there was just instantaneous decision making, not necessarily this process where you're thinking about it and debating with your friends about it. And that's huge.
Like, I know sometimes you even just second guess or you do things subconsciously without even thinking about it. But, I don't know if they want to walk down there, or I don't know. Yeah, they probably don't want to go around the next ridge, or they probably don't want to do this. And that has a huge part of it. And I know being by yourself, you kind of just wander, and that can really help.
Yeah, exactly. I know, like last year I was on an elk hunt with a buddy, and there's 3 of us hunting. My friend had a special elk tag in Nevada, and there's this huge bull screaming, and then he started to rake, and another guy was behind us, and none of us wanted to make a call on what to do. And my instinct was, if I was hunting, I would have run in and and tried to get closer to the bull while he was raking. But, you've got somebody else calling behind you, and he's got an opinion, and everybody's worried about what everybody else is thinking, and you're afraid if I mess it up, then somebody else is going to say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. But when it comes down to it, when you're the one hunting, you need to, so afterwards it didn't work out. My buddy's like, man, I really felt like I should have ran in, and I felt like I should have told him to run in, but I didn't want to be the one to mess it up. And so you look back at it and you're like, had you run in and done what you felt like you should have done and it didn't work out, well, no big deal. But when there's other people around, there's a lot of other factors that come into play. And a lot of times it makes you less successful. And that's something that this show is exploring, is that humans are natural born predators. And there's a lot of things that we don't even necessarily have to practice or tap into, that we're just born with, that we may not even realize we have the ability to do, that a lot of other animals have. And we look at it and go, oh, they can do this. And then we don't even realize that we can do that as well.
Yeah. And that's passed down, through generations. I like that. I watched the buffalo episode, and that painting of, the Indians that were dressed as coyotes and, moving right up on this buffalo. And what did you think of that, or what did you think of that when you went into it versus the outcome? Yeah,
I think it turned out pretty well. One of the things that I learned while doing that is there's a lot of things that we observe from nature and realize, oh, hey, that might work for us. And so there's that George Catlin painting where the Plains Indians have the wolf skins over their backs and they're sneaking into a herd of bison. And the reason that works is because for a wolf to kill a bison or any animal, essentially, it has to get it running. The wolf kills by chasing. And in our wolf episode, we kind of just dissected that a little bit deeper. But if a large animal like an elk or a bison stays put and decides to fight, there's too much injury possible for the wolf. So the wolf won't attack because it knows that it's a low percentage chance of actually catching it. So they incite the animal to run, a lot of times by instigating them or trying to spook them, get the animal running. And then once they're running, then they can attack from behind when the animal's already worn out.
Yeah.
So if the bison stay there, then they know that they won't be killed. Yeah. Now, the wolves do everything in their power to try to get one to spook and run, but as long as the bison stands there, the wolves won't attack. Well, the bison know this, and now on the flip side, as far as human hunters go, the Plains Indians need those bison to stay still because they need to throw a spear in it or shoot it with some kind of bow. So they need the bison to stand there. But when the bison see a human, they know if they stand there, they're going to die. So they start running. So the Indians look at it and go, well, when those wolves are there, they're staying still. What if we put a wolf skin over our back? Will the bison still stay there? And it turns out, in fact, they do.
Huh. Now, what's the timeline on that? When did that painting, when was that done?
That was like turn of the century during westward expansion. So he went out west to kind of paint what was going on out there. And in any story or painting or whatever, you never really know what he saw was real or what was, maybe he just thought, that's pretty cool. He saw it once.
An old story that someone else told,
Yeah, exactly. Turns out it is a valid tactic. And the reason it's valid is based upon animal behaviors. Now, in that episode, we used a coyote skin because there were Mexican wolves in the area where we were hunting those bison, but it's been so far removed that using a coyote skin, they see coyotes all the time, and it would be a similar tactic, but seeing it as a non-threat as opposed to a threat that they know not to run from. But I mean, essentially the same premise, which would probably work with other species as well, where they necessarily don't spook from.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you see or you hear about people saying that, if you're on all fours, an animal won't spook. And a lot of animals that way, they see a two-footed creature as a threat, not necessarily a four-legged creature as a threat. So is that kind of the same principle?
Yeah, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, I know a lot of people, you've seen those, say, archery hunting suits, decoys, where you dress up as whatever, an antelope or a deer or whatever. Yeah. But a lot of times, I think a lot of animals are more self-aware of what their own species looks like. So if you're a non-species, they don't interact with coyotes as often as they do deer. So to see a coyote off in the distance, if they don't have fawns or something, might not even be a threat for a deer. Whereas they see another deer, they see deer all the time. They kind of know how their own species moves. Whereas if they're seeing a different animal, it almost goes unnoticed.
Well, I just got done watching the episode, actually for the second time, the elk episode, with you and your brother were chasing those elk, mimic a pack of wolves. And it's pretty impressive, but it actually kind of reminds me of, like my dad and my grandpa generation, and they used to like set people up on points and then just push and drive herds of elk. And that was kind of like, that's an old school tactic. I'm sure people still do that as well, but that's also what it reminded me of when you guys were, mimicking a pack of wolves to catch a herd of elk.
Yeah, and that's actually been a tactic that me and my brother have used a lot. When we spook elk, we just chase them until we can catch up and cut them off again. Yeah. And it's something that we've done successfully for years. And you used to always hear people say, oh, when an elk runs away, it's gone forever. It can go, well, they're large animals. We have a lot more advantages to catching them than they do to get away. Obviously, they're fast, but if in the right conditions, if you can see them and hear them and it's open enough country, they're a large animal that overheats pretty quickly. I mean, if you take any horse and try to run it up a mountain, a human can outwalk a horse going up a mountain because it's going to overheat quicker. And so the same philosophy applies to elk, where in actuality, they can go a long ways, but if you know where they're going and can keep tabs on them, you should be able to catch them and cut them off if you're in good shape. Yeah.
So that hunt was kind of something you had done before, and that tactic was something you used before. But what was the big takeaway that you got from that particular hunt and elk hunting in general that way?
Yeah, I think the big takeaway on that is the way we have always thought of things may not necessarily be the truth. I mean, like I say, when I was growing up, the thought of catching up with a spooked elk never crossed people's mind. Like, it just what once you scared an elk, the hunt was over. And that tactic kind of shows sometimes when you spook the elk, the hunt can just start, and it can actually even lead to success because you scared them. So, I mean, it's not like we intentionally, went out with the only intention of spooking the elk and then chasing them. But, in a normal hunting situation, if you were in good shape and you spooked a large herd elk like that, on accident, that doesn't mean that it's over.
How do you think that changes between a rifle hunt and a bow hunt, and even early season, late season type situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the right conditions, it could work no matter what. But if it's warm out or whatever, you have a lot better chance of catching up and cutting them off. But the other thing, just like you were saying, where if you had a friend and you're going to go stalk these elk, and he goes and where their escape routes are and their patterns and other things, then you can, like you say, almost do an unintentional push where one guy goes this way, another guy goes that way, and hopes that they escape that way and slow them down enough to where you have time to take a shot.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty predictable, and we've done that quite a bit, in the rifle seasons and whatnot. It's not like you intentionally bump them, but once you bump them, okay, this is probably where they're going to go. And it always pays to have someone on that exit route.
Yeah, definitely.
So that episode actually, you had the wolf, and the idea came from, watching wolves hunt. Isn't that how the whole show kind of got its start, and you were watching wolves hunt?
Yeah, definitely. The first time that I'd actually seen a wolf in the wild, it spooked a herd of elk that I was hunting. And then I just decided to I noticed that they were running up the other side of the hill. It was a hot day. Their tongues were out. And I thought to myself, I think I know where they're going, and I bet I could catch them. And so I ran up to the top of the mountain. I mean, it was an all-day ordeal. But, I mean, I had water on my back. I was able to rehydrate, and I could see these elk were hurting. And when I got to the top of the mountain, the elk filed by me at maybe 10 yards real close, tongues hanging out, just veins popping out, eyeballs big. And they just walked past single file, and I could have had my pick of any elk, but I was hunting one big bull. And I think because he had heavy antlers, and I didn't even think about it, he didn't even make it with the rest of the group. So all the spikes and smaller bulls came off, and I think he turned around and ducked into the timber or stopped, and I never did find him again. But it opened my eyes to thinking, hey, whoa, that actually worked. And then a few years later, I noticed in one of the areas that I hunt, there's a certain way I go up the canyon, go up and hunt this large area for elk. And I know where they bed, and so I go up the ridge a certain way, and the winds generally come in some direction, so I follow it into this patch, and I have essentially a route that I take. And one day there's a fresh snow, and I see some wolf tracks right where I start. Well, it turns out that the wolf was hunting those elk in the exact same route that I always take. So it says to me, look, I'm actually doing something that this animal that hunts these elk every day does. We're very similar. Like, that wolf knows what I know, or I know what that wolf knows. And so to me, it was like, man, I wonder what other things in nature we just take for granted. We do the same in a natural way without even noticing it. And that's kind of where this idea of, let's see what else we can look at in nature and mimic or apply or learn from. Because the thought is, if I had just followed that wolf on these hunts, I would know how it hunted that mountain, and then could continue replicating that throughout my other hunts, where it may have taken me years to figure out the perfect route by hunting these elk so much that I knew the right routes to take.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. Huh. So how much have you been around wolves in your hunting area? I mean, you must have wolves around there then?
Yeah, we definitely have wolves around there.
So I hear a lot of, people say, if you see a wolf, just there's no elk in that area, blah, blah, blah. And how has it been with you hunting around elk or around wolves and within wolves? And do you feel like that's kind of starting to not be the case where the elk completely leave the country and that there's just more wolves and elk are kind of adapting to that?
Yeah, I mean, this may be contrary to common or popular belief, but there's no scientific data that supports that. If the wolves need to eat stuff too, so if there's no elk, then the wolves will leave.
Oh, yeah.
They'll continue to follow the elk. So the fact that they're going to eat away, I mean, they are very proficient hunters and they will continually kill. But once the animals are gone, then they're gone as well, and they'll just move to another area. So there are areas that do get hit harder where packs have kind of moved in and established territory, and they will put major damage on the numbers. But there's also the fact that if there is some wolves around, as long as the populations are in check and managed just like everything else, there shouldn't be any problems.
Well, I think it comes down to time that the wolf has been there too, because here in Oregon, wolves are fairly new, and elk just don't have that predator. They're not used to that predator, and so wolf can come into an area and just wreak havoc on it. So I think in the early stages of a wolf moving to an area, you're going to see a large decline in elk numbers, and they're going to push completely out of there. But like in areas where you're hunting and you have a consistent wolf basis for a longer period of time, those elk adapt to that, and that changes it a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean they definitely do hurt the numbers, but that's when the wolf populations aren't managed. That was the trouble we ran into. The elk were getting completely annihilated because the wolf population was increasing and the elk population was decreasing, and there was no management system for the predator. So you have an imbalanced system. But when you bring in, now we can hunt wolves in Montana, it's definitely balanced things out.
So being an outfitter in Montana and kind of spending a lot of time around that environment, how do you think that Montana is handling that, and how well is the populations kind of stabilizing over there?
Yeah, I mean, so long as we keep it to the correct model of conservation and don't let emotions get involved on either side, whether it's kill wolves or, because the last thing you want to do is, open it up too much to where now it'd be really hard to eradicate wolves, but if we eradicate them again and then get them relisted and then a protected species and then no more hunting, it just needs to be managed just like every other animal. As hunters, we follow a model of conservation, whether it's with predators or non-predators. And so we just need to follow that model and stick to our guns and say, now we're going to follow the science on this either way. So.
Well, and not letting emotions get into it on either side is absolutely right. And sometimes it's hard to see that in different areas on both sides of the fence. I think people get a little extreme about it, but I know Montana had 1,600 leftover tags. Is that kind of a sign that the wolf population is still pretty heavy over there, or is that being managed, and how well is the elk hunting going to be, or how bad are the wolves over there? I know sometimes you hear a lot that there's that many wolves that it's not worth hunting, but you kind of get mixed advice on that. Do you think Montana is going to be a decent place to be hunting in the next year or two?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think so. I think the reason for the leftover tags is an economic situation. It's just that the state, through a ballot initiative, increased the price of the tag almost double. So nobody wants to pay $1,000 to hunt elk, and they haven't realized that yet. But it's just too expensive. So there are a lot of leftover tags, and I think it's just more along the lines of if they lowered the price of the tag, they'd sell out like hotcakes. But.
So is that, I know you're kind of big into the tag strategy and everything. What's your thoughts on leftover tags and over the counter tags? What's your strategy there? I know a lot of us, at least throughout the West, and myself included, didn't draw anything and are coming to find out we're not drawing the tags we needed. What's your kind of strategy, or what's your thoughts on leftover tags and over the counter tags? Is Montana the best bet, or what's your thought?
There is really no best bet. I like Montana because, between Montana and Idaho, it's just, if you're going between Montana and Colorado, I would go Montana because there's just less people. I have a lot of hunters that show up and they're like, where are all the hunters at? I'm like, no, this is normal,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think just because it's further away from populations. But I necessarily wouldn't say where as so much as often. Like you can hunt there's guys that could hunt. Well, let me just put it this way. If you're in my strategy with general area over the counter type tags is you can get those tags every year. You're better off hunting the same area 5 times than just going to the new latest and greatest hotspot. Because if you're in an area where you know the habits of the elk, know their routes, know everything about them, then you're going to continually be successful. And so it might take a little while to get that knowledge. But there's guys that even when an area is down, the same 10% of guys are killing 80% of the animals. And it's because they know the area and they know the animals in that area. So my theory on general area hunting is not necessarily chasing the hot area, but picking an area and knowing it really well and being the guy that shoots the elk in there every year or deer or whatever, because that knowledge is invaluable. It's better than chasing a new area all the time or going, oh, well, I mean, if Colorado's close and you can realistically hunt that every year, every couple of years, whatever, you're a lot better off because every time you go in there, you're gaining experience and knowledge on that particular spot, and you're just going to be more successful overall in the long run.
No, that's good advice, and I'm kind of the same way, even when it comes to tag draw, because I would rather have a tag that I had every 5 years than a tag, and you get to know that area versus a tag, takes 15 to 20 years. By the time you hunt that hunt, you're like, man, if I could do that again, I would know exactly how to do it. So it's kind of been my strategy as well with the tag draw, and I definitely think you're on par with the general or the over the counter. And I think proximity has a lot to do with that too. Like if you can get to a unit, that's way better than having to drive 22 hours or whatever it may be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you can get to an area and maybe even potentially scout it during the summer or whatever, the more boots on the ground you have, the better. So it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh yeah, this state's doing really well. Now, if you're looking for a trophy, that's why you apply for those limited draws, because you can't shoot an animal that's not there. I mean, you can't go to a general area and go, I'm hunting for a 400-inch bull elk. It's like, yeah, well, good luck, because there aren't any here. Yeah. So you need to. That's where the point of putting in for limited draw tags are, because if you want those larger animals, they're only going to be in specific units because they need age and certain food sources and all kinds of things that may not be in other places.
Yeah, but I would argue that there are a lot of units out there that are undervalued or that carry a big bull or a few big bulls that people don't look at. And, people kind of get fixated on this is the top hunt, so that's what I'm doing. And then everyone follows the crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
That hunt you did a hunt last year for Roosevelt's up in Alaska. Was that a pretty tough draw hunt?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tough draw. I think the draws are like, I honestly don't know the draws. I would just be spouting off a number, probably around 5%, something like that.
That seems a pretty crazy hunt. Was that tell us about that one. Was that a good adventure?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Me and my brother went up there, and it was just, as far as getting to hunt a species I'd never hunted Roosevelt elk before. And up there, their bodies are enormous. So you've got the factor of you're in a very remote place in Alaska, and you're carrying out an animal that might weigh up to 1,400 pounds. You've got, realistically, the hunt wasn't the hard part; it was just packing out all the meat. And you're in Kodiak brown bear country, so you've got a lot of logistical problems that you don't have on normal hunts. It's like, oh, we're dealing with 13-foot bears. Wow. But yeah, you just had to. I mean, the bears aren't really a problem, but you just have to get your meat up high enough. And to be honest, what made that trip was the fact that it was so tough. And the tough part came in once we shot elk, because we shot the elk quite a ways away from where we were camped. So we had a lot of climbing, and it was literally, for every day of hunting, 4 days of packing is what it really amounted to.
Wow. Yeah, just showing the pictures of you guys' meat pile was pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah. We just, it was, we ended up filming it and doing a little documentary thing that we're going to release later this year or next year maybe. But, just the whole fact of how much those packs weighed, how far we had to go, is just ridiculous. But that in the end, that's what made it the adventure and made it such a trip. Like doing it, you're like, I never want to do this again. And then when you're done, you're like, oh, that was really fun. Let's do that again.
Yeah, until you get there. So I know you guys are you're always pushing the limits to the extreme, like you said, and putting a lot of boots on the ground. 250, 300 days a year you're hunting now?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it's through guiding because that's my main business. My main job is taking people hunting. But even through my own personal hunting, doing the Solo Hunters show, doing Apex or whatever, I get a fair bit of hunting in. But it seems to be, my busiest year, I was 323 days in the field. The rest was like Christmas and travel. But it's evened out a little bit more, less time in the field because I've got other obligations now that I may not have had before with the TV shows and other things. So there's a lot more travel and writing and stuff involved with those. But yeah, I would say still at least 200 plus days, 250 days a year in the field.
So how much is going on these big adventures and things kind of jaded your perspective of what an adventure is, or just coming back and kind of hunting hunting elk in Montana? Does that still do it for you, or do you have a jaded view of what an adventurous hunt would be?
Oh, no. I still love pretty much every hunt. And really for me, it's the adventure is what you make it. You can do things an easy way or a hard way. And for me, I just hunt the way that I want to hunt. I don't really have a preconceived idea of what I need to be doing. And so if I think that, just because there might be an easier way to do it, I might just do it the way I want. There might be an area where you could just drive around and find a big buck to shoot, but I'd rather go hike in and make it hard for myself and have what I would consider a better trip. So I make each hunt, I just hunt how I want to hunt. And sometimes that means making it harder for myself, but that's how I enjoy it. So that's how I hunt. I don't really it just doesn't even really matter the hunt. I just make it my hunt. I do what I want to do, and then make it an adventure however it happens. So it doesn't matter where I am. I still love it.
You were telling me about that fallow deer that you killed in New Zealand right before you left, and that's true hunting adventure right there.
Oh yeah, I had multiple opportunities to take a fallow deer early in the trip, and nice ones too, but it was just nothing. It just wasn't right. It was just almost too easy. And not that it was an easy area, but there was just a lot of deer. And so I kept looking. And finally, by the last day, it was like 70-mile-an-hour winds. I was actually supposed to leave after the morning hunt, but I ended up leaving the truck and not coming back until about midnight. I ended up shooting a buck. I think I hiked like 20-something miles that day. I forgot to bring water. I was like, I was hurting, and it wasn't, a lot of things weren't intentional. It just, I was like, I saw a buck over here, and then I got over there, and the winds were bad, and ended up being gale force winds on the pack out. But by all those things happening, that animal meant a lot more to me than had I just rolled out and shot one the first day.
Well,
so
that's like what we were talking about with the hunting solo and it just making you go farther and farther and farther, and that just ends up being the adventure in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
So what would you consider yourself world class at?
That's a tough one. I would say, elk guiding has been my thing for a long time. Elk hunting, I've made my entire living hunting elk, really. So I would say, guiding for elk, calling elk. I know elk really well. And then also, adventure type mountain hunting, solo hunting. I've been doing it for a long time. Most of my personal hunts have been alone in random. I'm not afraid to go out of the country and try things on my own and do things and explore. And so for that aspect, I would say I'm pretty decent at doing those kind of things. But I'm fairly well known for hunting elk because that's how I make my living. But now I've kind of expanded into a lot of other species all over the world. So I'd say just the ability to look at a challenge, say, oh, I think I can try that or do that, or just go and try it and do it. And there's a lot of people that do that as well. And there's a lot of people that are afraid to do that. So That's just something that I value in myself, is the ability to just kind of pick up my stuff and go try something new.
Yeah. And so having the background in elk hunting and then kind of being the type that explored the world and having a lot of diversity in your hunting background, what would you say that most elk hunters are doing wrong, or what would most elk hunters, where could they improve?
I think a lot of elk hunters kind of, yeah, that's a tough question. I think a lot of the problems I see is just, a lot of elk hunting can be done through glass, like getting a ways away from the area, picking out the elk and then moving in. But, also I walk a lot, but I do use my eyes a lot as well. And then just the fact of, calling at the right times, being in the right locations, being aggressive when you need to be aggressive, and being patient when you need to be patient. And it's just essentially things that all hunters could, benefit from, I would say, really.
Well, if age kind of creates wisdom, and I think all those things come from experience, but how do you shorten that learning curve? How do you, take someone for like yourself example, it's 300 some days a year, you're getting all this experience and those things come second nature to you. But how do we shorten the learning curve? If I'm getting into elk hunting, I want to make myself the next level of elk hunter, how do you shorten the curve without saying, well, spend 50 years doing it or 300 days a year doing it and you'll be an expert? How do you shorten that, or how do you take what you've learned and apply it to the average hunter, or what can they apply to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that the average hunter can do to just better themselves and make it easier for them. I think physical fitness is pretty important for elk hunting. We get a lot of elk hunters that aren't in what I would consider elk shape. And the longer you can go before you get tired, the better your chances are going to be in any type of mountain hunting situation, whether it be elk or in New Zealand for tahr or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But as long as you can physically go to your best, then you're definitely going to benefit. And then the other thing is, take good advice when it's given to you. Don't be afraid, and also don't be afraid to ask for advice. I think a lot of hunters get out there and they're like, they feel like, oh, I shouldn't ask what I should do here in this situation or that situation. If you know somebody that does it a lot and you're friends with them, talk to them, get their take on it, and then take that and kind of adapt it to how things you've learned, and also don't be afraid to learn things by trial and error. Like if you messed up one way, figure out how not to mess up the next time. And that's something that guiding's really taught me, is we have a very limited amount of time to be successful. So you can't make mistakes. You can't make stupid mistakes. And so a lot of times that means you have to do things the hard way because it's the best way. So I always do things the best way. Don't take the easy route out if it's not the best option. If you see an elk over here and the best way to go on it is walk all the way around the mountain and come up the other side, then do that. Don't give yourself shortcuts because you're feeling lazy or whatever, because in the long run, it just doesn't work out.
That's good advice. And I think a lot of people do either take the shortcut or, let that fitness get the best of them, and then they have to take shortcuts or compromises in the woods. And I think it's good advice. When you think of successful hunters, who do you think of, or who do you look up to?
Oh, there's a lot of people. I would say most of them are just people that I've met in the woods, or people that I hunt with, not necessarily like guys that everyone would know, but I've got a friend in New Zealand, Darren, who's an amazing hunter. I've met guys, a couple guides in Alaska. Jeremy Rusink is a really great hunter, and Cole Kramer is an awesome guy. And so just dudes that I've met out hunting and other things, those are the guys that I really, it's guys that I've kind of found, you start talking, guys that do what I do all the time, and we've kind of come to the same conclusions of the best way to do things. And you go, okay, well, these guys are also very successful. They've put in the time, and, we do things in a very similar fashion. And so those are the guys that, I really look up to as far as hunting skills go.
I was going to say, do you think that the next question was going to be, do you think that a lot of those top level hunters do very similar things, or how much variance is there in that top level? But it sounds like you have very similar ways of going about things at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you take any really good hunters and give them the same situations, they're going to do things very similarly. And it's a lot of that is just time in the field, and you've done things so long that there's a way that through trial and error you've learned that this works and that doesn't work. And I think that some of the best hunters in the world, just everybody kind of does these things in a similar way because it's the most efficient, best way. And it's not necessarily something you can teach, but just a way of hunting that just comes through time spent in the field. I mean, there is no substitute for experience. It doesn't really matter how much you read or how much you watch. The experience always trumps it because you're learning, you're constantly adapting. And so the guys that spend the most amount of time are going to be the guys that have the most experience, and they're going to do things the best, in my opinion.
No, and that's kind of goes back to having more tags versus having that great tag. And I think that the more you can hunt, the better. And sometimes, even if you're not killing the biggest bull yet, you probably could develop those skills faster if you're getting tags versus waiting on that right tag.
Oh, definitely. I mean, having tags in your pocket, and that's like the whole reason I grew up in the state of Nevada and still live in Nevada, and getting tags here was hard. So I would just, even from a young age, get tags in other states and just go try to figure it out, because I'd rather be out there hunting than waiting and get a deer tag every other year or something. And, you just don't okay, now
fill the fix.
Yeah, I'm always a rookie. It's like every year I go out, I can't figure it out. And it's just because it was hard to build experience. So I just had to start going other places and hunting as much as I could.
So if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, what would you what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Don't push the old dudes so hard. Would accidentally kill one of them. No, I mean, when I was guiding and whatever, I was pretty good, but I did, and I still do push people pretty hard. But because I want them to be successful as much as I would if I was on my own hunt. And sometimes I know that just involves pushing people or pushing myself. But I think that I really wouldn't give myself any advice, because I'd just say, go out there and learn, figure it out. That's my best advice. Just figure it out. And I think I would have responded pretty well to that. So.
Oh, that's cool. So I've been meaning to ask you, I've been watching this new Under Armour gear you've been wearing, and I really like the open pattern. What's your thoughts on it, and how much do you like it?
Oh, I love that. That camo pattern's awesome. And then some of the gear's really good as far as regulating your temp, like thermally, because it's a synthetic wool. And I don't know, I looked online the other day to actually get another pair of pants, and they're all sold out, but they will have a lot more in this fall. But it's something that I've been using a lot, and they're just coming out with more Western type stuff. And that camo pattern pretty much blends in better than anything I've ever used. So especially on open country hunts, and I'm in constantly varying terrain that just looks different all the time. I mean, maybe on one trip over in this part of the world and the next. So something that kind of blends in, and I don't really have to change up my system. Because I like to just have a system, know how everything works, how in all kinds of environments, whether it be whatever kind of gear. So I'm the kind of guy that shoots one caliber rifle, uses the same kind of binoculars. Like, I have a system, and when that system works, then I know it'll work everywhere, or I know how it'll perform in this place or that place or whatever. So there's no surprises out there. But I've really liked that, because that camo pattern pretty much blends into everywhere I've been. So even in the timber or in the open, it doesn't really matter. It's just, it works really well. So I like that.
Is it now they're making a layering system with that, or what's that look like? Is they kind of trying to compete on the higher end camo market?
Yeah, they're coming out with a lot more Western type hunting apparel, because they've never really had that. They've had a lot of stuff for the whitetail hunter, but they really didn't have any Western stuff. And now that the Ridge Reaper line of clothing's coming out, and there's a lot of things that Western hunters, especially like elk hunters and mountain hunters, will really enjoy, because like the synthetic wools and other things, they don't smell. You don't really, but you can go in 40, I mean, elk hunting, you see so many variables in temperature. It might be 55 degrees one day and 0 degrees the next. And you don't want to have to be, you just can't bring enough stuff sometimes. So you just want one system that works kind of through a varying range of climates and conditions. And so that's what I like about it. Plus, if it gets wet, you stay warm. And that's kind of important to me as well.
What was the deal? You posted the other day something about washing your clothes on a fence. What was the deal with that?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm literally, I kind of live out of a vehicle. So I've got like a box and then all my stuff's there. And just, I live a very nomadic vagabond lifestyle where I might be living here one day and there the next. I don't stay in one place for too long. So yeah, I mean, the trouble about that kind of lifestyle is there's often not very many opportunities to wash clothes. So I'll swing into a place or a friend's place or something and, hey, can I wash my clothes here? And then you need somewhere to hang and dry them because they don't really have dryers there. Everybody hangs their clothes. So it's just one of those.
I just saw the post of something. Your camo was hanging on a fence line. I don't remember what the comment was, but it was pretty comical.
Yeah. Oh, I said, I always make a joke. Like, because I hung it in the front of their drive, and people come up and they see these clothes, and the lady's like, "Why'd you hang your clothes right? I mean, you could have hung them in the back." And I said, "No, that way everyone understands why I'm not wearing any pants when they pull up."
That's what it was.
Yeah, because you just constantly like, okay, now it's time to wash everything. If that's my chance to do my laundry, I'm just gonna wash it all.
Living the dream, Remi.
Yeah, that's kind of like the behind the scenes that people don't realize. They're like, oh, you get to hunt all the time. And you're like, yeah, but I have to do my laundry at random people's houses and hang it on fences. Like, no, I get it now.
Yeah. So from a guy who puts probably more miles on a pair of boots than anyone I know, I'm looking for a new pair of boots. You got any recommendations for boots you run?
Yeah, boots, just get something that's comfortable. If it doesn't fit you right, then it's not worth wearing. You'd be better off. I mean, some guys, everybody touts a certain pair of boots. You just got to find something that's comfortable. Now, if you're it depends what you're doing, but like if you're going to go on a extreme rocky area hunt, then you want some kind of shank in it, or some kind of very stiff sole. Just keeps your feet from getting fatigued, and you just actually learn to walk a little bit different in stiffer soled boots, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But
I can't stand the stiffer soled boots, but I've always been a light boot type person, so I'm trying to break into that. But that's the problem, is that none of them feel comfortable because I'm not used to a stiff sole. So that's the kind of the curve I'm trying to overcome is getting used to them at all.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys that don't, I've worn 8-inch boots my whole life. So it's like just second nature to wear a taller boot, and that's what I've liked. But if for a lot of people, you may want to try a stiff-soled boot that's a shorter top, because you cut it down a lot of weight. And the other thing is you just got to walk in them a lot because it takes a while to get used to it. And the break-in period on a stiff pair of boots is a lot. Some of them maybe even 50 miles, whereas a normal pair of boots is like 8 to 12 miles on lighter pair of boots or an ultralight pair of boots. But there was one season where I just got sick of wearing heavy boots and just wore like Solomon trail runners until it just started to snow too much. And packing out heavy loads, it wasn't very good on my ankles. But in the long run, I was like, oh, that worked for a season. And then I went exactly the opposite. The next season, it was like only mountaineering boots all the time, 24/7. So, it's just whatever you're feeling, whatever works. You're better off getting something that you're comfortable in. But also, you gotta realize, like, if you get a pair of stiff-soled shoes, you can't give up on them until they're broken in, and that's key. And then a pair of boots that fits. A lot of people get a pair of boots because somebody says, oh, this is the boot you need. And they get them and they just don't fit their foot right. And you get all kinds of problems. So, put in some insoles or whatever you have to do to make those boots fit. That's my footwear rant.
Yeah. No, I know you go through a lot of them, so I figured I'd ask you for some advice. I hate doing it, but we'll have to break some in this summer. What do folks have to look forward to as far as the Apex Predator? What do you guys got coming out the rest of the season?
Yeah, so our last episode of this run will be here on Thursday. It's a learning from the otter, so it's underwater hunting. And that's probably, I like this episode. There's just, maybe because I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the way humans are essentially natural born underwater hunters, where you look at other mammals that hunt underwater and you think, oh, we don't really compare that. And it turns out we have the same essentially dive reflexes as all other mammals that hunt underwater, including whales. And you're like, wow, that's crazy to think that humans are born like that. So that was, I learned a lot. Plus I pushed myself to some limits that I never thought I would obtain and always thought would be cool. So for that, I really enjoyed that episode. And then hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, we'll start filming another season, another run of episodes, looking at different animals and different things in nature, and essentially keep pushing and learning and presenting.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you guys looking at doing a season 2 then?
Yeah. I mean, that's always the goal. Anytime you start TV, you never look for an end. You always look for a continuation. So yeah, we're hoping that it continues on, and that a lot of that comes down to like the support that people give the show, whether it be telling the network they like it or following us on social media and other things. It's just anytime you can show that you've got people that enjoy what you're doing, then then it continues on.
That's right. Get out there and watch it, guys. So what's the best way to like support the show as far as you guys go off any downloads or reviews, or where's the best place that people can check it out at?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to check it out now that the season's pretty much run, I mean, aside from catching reruns, our website, apexpredator.tv, you can actually download the whole series like right now, and it's pretty sweet. You can just watch them all online. I love watching stuff on my computer, and actually watch more TV on my cell phone than anything, or on my smartphone, but that's just because like I'm always gone. But while traveling, I kind of check out Netflix or whatever. So if I can't watch it on my phone or on a laptop, then I probably won't have ever seen it. So that's why I was really pushing for digital type content, because that's how I view content. So yeah, check it out. apexpredator.tv. You can get the season on our VHX link, and that's easy to do. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then obviously check it out on the Sportsman's channel, because that's huge for us. It's on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific.
So this Thursday is going to be the final episode?
Yep, final episode for this series. And then I don't really know what happens after that. I think they may rerun them. I don't really know. I'm not the programming
you got anything else you want people to track you down? Can they find you on Facebook? How can people find out more about you personally?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook at Remi Warren. I pretty much use Instagram more than anything now. I never really liked Facebook that much. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of, especially the hunting scene, is kind of moved to Instagram more so than Facebook.
Yeah, so I've got the Instagram at Remi Warren, and also Twitter at Remi Warren. So any social media, but yeah, I definitely, I respond to messages and other things pretty well when I'm around. Like a lot of people, if you catch me at the right time when I'm not doing anything, I'll definitely reply or give you a shout out or whatever.
20 days within the whole year to catch Remi Warren, and that's it.
Exactly. But it's on my phone. If I'm like, it just so happens, if it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm looking at my phone, somebody's like, you never replied to me, but you replied to this other guy really quick. It's like, yep, that's when I was looking at my phone.
Yeah, I know how that goes. Just happened to be sitting there and getting service at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've even because like most of my posts and everything come from while I'm out in the field, like take a picture and save it on my phone and then post it as soon as I get service or whatever. So a lot of the stuff's just updates or pictures while I'm out there doing other things.
Well, awesome. Yeah, everyone check out his Instagram, follow him. He does update it every once in a while, but some really good stuff, and it's seen the world, so some really great content.
Yeah, thanks.
Alrighty, Remi. Well, thanks for being on. Appreciate all the tips.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again.
Yeah, sounds great, man.
All right, thanks, Remi.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.